We've had lots of discussions about the use of classes, and we're now going to formalise that discussion by looking at it in an observed situation. We have made a page called the Edit Inquiry page, and you're looking at the code for that. That's the default code created by the template as soon as we issue the generate command. And it has lots of aspects to it. Now, you'll remember from our discussions that the class can have three different types of members. A name, which is the only mandatory member, and it can have data, and it can have methods. Here's our Edit Inquiry page, and you'll see class Edit Inquiry page. That's the name of our class. And what we do in Angular and Ionic, in fact it's just Angular really, is we export whatever we need to use elsewhere when we import it. Now here, this particular page is importing components and inits from the Angular framework, and this Edit Inquiry page can be exported to be used by other things. Here on this line here, you'll see a thing with an @ symbol, and that's what's called a decorator. And the decorators describe what a class or an object or a thing can do. And in Ionic Angular, we face several different types of these, and mostly they're generated for us without any intervention on our part. This is very different from version 3 of Angular Ionic. This is a much bigger improvement than you might think. For example, our app routing module has ng module as its decorator. That means Angular module. And in fact, our page is an Angular module. But our service is an injectable. That means it can be put to use by forcing it into another piece of code, injecting it, so that it can be used there. So those are the kind of decorators that we use. And so far we've got for our class a name and a description of what it can do. These are almost like the include statements in C#. This almost tells it as an instruction set what the transpiler has to do when the application is compiled. Our page, and this is the code behind, remember the TypeScript page, already has one method member, ng on init. And this one it has one purpose: to run as soon as this particular object is initialized. So I'm going to just put a comment in to show you how that's done. The comment will mean nothing to you at the moment, forgive me, but I just wanted to show you how to make a comment. Now I'm looking around for a better interface than this one, because of this grey on black, I'm not sure is very effective for you to read it. I wish I could find a way to change a particular theme, but I haven't found a good theme yet. So that's one method member, and I've put a comment in. We can add our own method members very easily. So I'm going to just paste one in underneath here, and you'll see the structure of a method, the name of the method. Now the method begins with it's all done in camel case, so small s to begin with, and capital E in the secondary part of the word. Save inquiry, then you've got parentheses, and you open braces. And once again, we can put in here inquiry. So that's two methods. Now what we will do is we will need to work with an inquiry. So we're going to put a data member. It's going to be private scope to this particular module. It's going to be inquiry. And that's us declared a data member that we can now use in our code. Now our type of inquiry, we're going to have to specify the data that it's allowed to use. And there's a really cool way that we can do that in Angular by using a thing called an interface. And that's what we will do next. We're able to specify the type of our inquiry very simply indeed. And this illustrates one of the main problems with JavaScript. I can put the word any, and that means that our inquiry can be of any type at all. And that's the nature of JavaScript. You can apply any data type to any variable that's been created, roughly. But allowing us to get round that, we're going to use features of TypeScript. Now, TypeScript is, as you know, a subset or a superset, of JavaScript, and it allows us to work with the thing I mentioned earlier called the interface. So we define the data in the same way as we would define a data type in C#, and we can then use that definition to make sure that whenever we use an inquiry, it fits the type that we're going to need. So in our app folder, create a new folder, and we'll call it interfaces, and that's going to have a file in it. So we're going to go to interfaces, new file, and we're going to call this excuse me, I'm losing my voice. That's better, I've had a good cough. So we're going to call the file that we're going to make, new file, and we're going to call it inquiry, without the capital this time, .ts, to annotate the fact that it's a TypeScript file. So we've now got our TypeScript file. So let's specify what our structure should be. So we start with the word interface. Now that's going to be an include statement to the transpiler. And we're going to call this interface inquiry. We open curly braces and we put the data that we want it to hold inside. I've got the data on my clipboard, and that's what we want our inquiry to look like. It will have an ID, which is a number, ID of type number, customer of type, colon is used of type, string, phone and product of type string. So we've now got our interface that we can use. So I'm just going to click Control S, Control K, Control S, that saves everything. And if I now go back to my Edit Inquiry page, I need to import that interface. Import. Open the curly braces, and I usually put 2 spaces. I'm doing this all very slow time for you. So inquiry, and then we need to put the from. And I'm doing this the way I normally do it. I normally set up that and then go up 1 level. You can see that interfaces is now available for us. And inquiry is the interface that we can choose. So why do I have a lovely red line? I have an error. It's because in our inquiry, we never exported it so that it could be imported. Control S. We now go back to our inquiry page. Our error is gone. That proves my point. We have to export something before we can import it and use it. So I'm now able to say that instead of any, I can make this one of type inquiry. That's us wrapped a whole structure up inside one word. And that means that every time we make an inquiry using that data member, it has to conform to the structure that we've given it. ID number, and then the 3 string elements must be present, or this editor will tell us you've done something wrong. So that's a brilliant way of us knowing that we've got control over the code and something monitoring it on our behalf. What we need to do now is to make sure that when we use this class, this edit page class, that our inquiry data member has data to work with. Now, similarly to the onInit, the constructor is fired whenever we make an object, and we give our constructor some default data to work with. I'm saying that this .inquiry should have this data to initialize it. Now I've pasted that in, and it's come out without the correct spacing. So I think it's probably easier for you to read it like that. Please, that's just our TS lint stuff. They're not moaning. It's about formatting. It's not about structure. So every time we make this inquiry an object, we will have ID of 0 to start off with before we overwrite it with the custom values that we get from the interface or from the storage where inquiries are held. So that's us finishing off the page for the moment. And what we'll move on next is to our service, and we'll start to code up what that can do.